Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay today. Let me check my volume, make sure the volume is good. I have a slate of shows all day. Jimmy Dore is going to be here at 2:30, so that is somewhat of a momentous occasion for me. Abby Martin is going to be here tomorrow at 5 p.m. I need to confirm with her, make sure she's still on. But both of those are awesome. So, fucking A. Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders. And before I get into the Bernie Sanders, if you enjoy the content, if you enjoy what I'm putting down, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Super Chat or Patreon. Either one of those things is an amazing help to the show, seeing as they demonetize everything, even stuff that doesn't necessarily need to be monetized. Especially when you're talking about war or something to that effect. And I talk about war all the time since we're violent as human beings. Not as an absolute, but in our particular society, we're violent. So, Peter version 1. Yes, Jimmy and Jamal, best progressives around. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Bow like a leopard, Jamal. Man, I'm going to be trolling pretty hard now. You weren't trolling pretty hard before? Fair enough. Bernie Sanders. Bernie fucking Sanders. Do you remember this? Right here.
Thank you, Seattle, for being one of the most progressive cities in the United States of America.
We want an opportunity to address. We want an opportunity on the mic.
Well, ask him.
Give him a check or we're shutting this event down now. If you do not listen to her, your event will be shut down right now. Right now. Your decision. Make a decision now.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be.
Black Lives Matter shut down Sanders. Well, he didn't shut the event down. Sanders essentially backed away and let them speak their piece. But essentially, they believe they weren't being listened to. They believe that you were running this campaign and there is a demographic that you are not fully paying attention to. But here's the catch. What they kind of miss, is that economics is in their interests. But nevertheless, he wasn't necessarily discussing these issues of African Americans and so forth. He was running this campaign more so as we need to pay more attention to economic concerns of all the people in the country, particularly the 99%. There's also Tom Perez. Tom Perez, Hispanic, Tom Perez, advised Hillary Clinton to cast Sanders as the white candidate in order to turn off minorities. That's amazing, right? We're going to cast Sanders as being the white candidate. For anything that you want to say about Tom Perez did send this letter using race, trying to alienate this person who would have been better for those races. Hands down, would have been absolutely better from the standpoint of their wallets and economics for those races, to try to turn those races off because Sanders was white. When Sanders ran in this race originally, I don't think Sanders had any thought that he could win. I think Sanders ran with this idea of, I'm going to pull Clinton to the left, I'm going to put my ideals out. And what he found, he caught fire. He wasn't fancy. He wasn't any of that stuff. He just came out and he opened his mouth. The thing is, the public heard what he was saying, and the public was like, I like what that guy's saying. That guy's saying something different than what you guys are saying. I like what this guy's saying. And in saying that I like what this guy's saying, he caught fire. Feel the goddamn burn. He caught fire. All throughout the United States, he caught fire. For African Americans, though, it took a while for people to really pay attention to him. By the time Sanders finished the race, however, all demographics, he pulled them all to his side. When you had diverse states like Hawaii, I think Hawaii is the most diverse state in this country, or Washington State is one of the most diverse. He was winning those things in spades. Under 40, he won in spades. The youth vote. He had more of the youth vote than Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump combined, the man was a fucking phenomenon. And major. It wasn't because of an advertisement campaign. It wasn't because he was slick and fancy looking. It wasn't because he was sexy and he had these awesome suits and he had this polished hair and he would give this particular... No! It was what he was saying, what was coming out of his mouth. It was the things that was rattling in those human beings. I haven't heard that before. That sounds great. Why don't more politicians talk that way? Why don't more politicians say those things? Why am I just now hearing this? This man is making all the sense in the world. Part of the reason is because that man was not bought. That man was essentially running based off the power of the people who were putting money in their pockets, which was the American population. $27 at a time to some degree. There's a magnificent difference between who Sanders is versus who the people he were running against. And when Sanders first started that campaign, Sanders didn't necessarily think Sanders had a chance of winning. He just ran to push her to the left. It was only later where he's trying to figure the shit out to say, okay, maybe we have a chance of winning this. All right, let's try to win this. One of the drags on his campaign, however, was the argument from Democrats, Hillary Clinton particularly, that he wasn't going to be able to get the black vote. The tactic that Tom Perez was using, this whole thing of trying to alienate him as a candidate of whites, that's something that they actually tried to use. The media even picked this up. Whether you want to talk about media collusion or not, the media picked up that argument that Sanders was a candidate of whites. I remember watching the election during the primaries with Hillary Clinton trying to hug every darkie that she can find, thinking to myself, blacks only make up 13% of the population. What are you doing? This makes no sense. The strategy was purely just to get it through the primaries. But your political season extends beyond the primaries. What do whites think when you try to hug every darkie like this, as opposed to dealing with their economic concerns or concerns that revolve around everybody? I often make the argument that you don't have to hug identity exclusively of economics. Both of those things work in tandem. In fact, I don't think you can do those things exclusively. I think both of them need to work in tandem. Sanders, the question keeps coming up on whether he's running in 2020. I've made the point that he is running in 2020. I think everything that he's been doing up to this point has pointed in the direction of him running in 2020. Setting up Our Revolution, sets up his own, you can say, his military wing to kind of create this kind of backstop to help him and support him as he runs in the election. Our Revolution set up a super PAC again, one of those steps, creating an organization that's separate and distinct from him, while at the same token has his workable point of view and the way they go about their affairs. He's been given foreign policy speeches. He's been more getting to the point of saying we need to function better from the standpoint of Israel and Palestine, what Israel is doing in that part of the world is horrendous. He's been pointing to this idea of our foreign policy, saying Syria, he doesn't even know if that's legal, saying we shouldn't be helping Saudi Arabia murder Yemenis. He has been trying to make up for the defects that he had in his prior campaigns, including one particular way. This argument about not reaching out to African Americans. And he is putting a knife in that right now. Bernie Sanders rallies with Black Lives Matter leaders in California to put a spotlight on mass incarceration. Fucking A. Fucking A. It's one thing when I get on my show and I go against somebody. There's a certain energy that I feel when I'm going after somebody. It's not necessarily a bad energy, but it is an energy of this kind of justice, and it is somewhat of an energy of trying to balance a scale of sorts. So trying to get across the logic of what's taking place and why what's taking place is either wrong or the perspective of the person that's putting it is wrong. It's a different feeling, however, when it's for something. That feels great all around. I am for this. I love this. I love the fact that he's building an army. And his, interestingly enough, this building an army is creating a broad base that's pulling together all of these disparate strands of environmentalism, Native Americans, anti-war, African Americans, Hispanics, LGBTQ, and putting them all in a group and saying, this is the base to which we will use to change this country. Fucking love it. Fucking absolutely love it. Let's read this. This is an awesome thing. He is making up for the defects in his prior campaign. And the wild part about this is, when I'm and I'm going to read the article real quick, but from a standpoint of chess, when I play the game, I haven't had the opportunity to play as often because I don't do well focusing on two things at once, and I've just been doing videos. So there's no point in me playing because I wouldn't necessarily do all that well. But when I used to play, when I was playing at my best, around 2000 or so, my rating 2000, over 2000, undermining and taking your opponent down oftentimes involves destroying the things that allows your opponent to be your opponent, if that makes sense. From the standpoint of politics, taking it from chess for a moment, Republicans, Democratic policy is absurd. These are the most feckless idiots that you can find. Either they're feckless on purpose, or they're feckless because they don't know any better. I don't necessarily know which. I don't particularly care. You have a Republican Party that has destroyed one edifice after another of the Democrats' strong points. Now, I would make the case that they've destroyed those strong points, and the Democrats have let them destroy those strong points because ultimately, Democrats don't care about the poor, and the same way Republicans don't care about the dead. But Republicans do care about the rich. Oh, they love the rich. They fetishize the rich. If you're looking for people to be soldiers in your army, the Republican Party will drop to their knees if you have $20 to give them. The wild part about this is they've done magnificently well, however. Unions destroyed. Voting from the standpoint of like Operation Cross-Check and those things. Again, going after Democrats, destroying the voting blocks of Democrats, meaning African Americans. When Al Gore lost that election, hundreds of thousands of African Americans were shut off the rolls. Voting, even from the standpoint of now, meaning in many of these states, in Wisconsin, all of those people were kicked off the rolls in Wisconsin, was more than the amount that was required to win by Donald Trump. Doesn't necessarily mean that all those people would have voted for Hillary Clinton. Doesn't really matter. I'm just talking about the number of people who were shunted off the rolls based upon the way Republicans go about running their elections. They've done a great job with that. Now, you could say that the reason why Democrats didn't do anything to protect the unions is because ultimately Democrats, they're paid for by plutocrats, and unions essentially hurt the plutocratic dynamic, in which case the Democrats don't necessarily want to come to the support of unions because they would lose support from their financial benefactors. Whatever the reason is, those edifices that propped up the Democratic Party were being undermined, and the Democrats didn't do squat. When Republicans gerrymandered those districts, Democrats didn't do squat. When they attacked the voting rights law, barely pushed back. They're attacking workers now. Supreme Court. Obama didn't have the balls or the stones to install his particular person and force Republicans to drag him out. Merrick Garland. I'm making this point that from the standpoint of politics, you have this thing of political armies, and your goal in the political strategy to undermine the armies and undermine the things that allow that person to be any kind of assault or any kind of threat to you. Bernie Sanders is building an army. That's essentially what this boils down to. He's getting all of these disparate groups and a kind of intersectionalism under a particular umbrella. And I suspect strongly that he's doing this because when he runs in the primaries, he's trying to make up for all of the defects that he had in his prior campaign when he ran in a haphazard way in 2016. I love this. This is a good thing. And this is something that should have been done last time. And I suspect he would have did this last time if he would have known. One thing that you need to know about Sanders is that I suspect that he hadn't changed from his prior political career. He lost the first races that Sanders went into, but he kept going. And he fine-tuned the process and he got better as he ran in those races, eventually winning in those prior mayoral and so forth when he first started into politics. I suspect that what he's saying is this kind of understanding and learning in the last 2016 campaign and making up for his deficits. So let's read this before we finish. More than 2 years since Black Lives Matter protesters confronted Sanders at a campaign rally in Seattle, Sanders joined leaders of the movement in California to call for changes to the dysfunctional, destructive criminal justice system. The former Democratic presidential hopeful received a warm reception from supporters and activists at the packed $1 Million Theater in Los Angeles on Saturday evening, as he heartily criticized the broken system that disproportionately jails African Americans, Latinos, and Native Americans. Activist Sean King didn't mince words when they introduced Sanders, alluding to the senator's political ambitions and touting Senator Sanders' history of supporting the civil rights movement. Here's the thing. The wild part about it is Black Lives Matter interrupted his protests This was the same guy that had chained himself to a black woman at a rally when he was younger. Know your history. Don't tell me it's irrelevant. It is an origin story, said King. It takes guts in this country. It takes guts to refuse to be a Democrat or a Republican. I believed that he could beat Donald Trump, and I still believe he could, added King. Acknowledging he hasn't always championed criminal justice reform, Sanders said 5 years ago he didn't know that 2 million people incarcerated in the United States, roughly 400,000, are in jail for being poor, but claims he's learning fast. That's true, by the way. You have a large number of people who are in prison, not because they've been convicted, but because they can't afford bail. Think about that shit. Human beings locked in cages. They may be innocent. They can't afford bail. You have these bail companies that just kind of spring up, taking advantage of the fact that these people can't afford bail. African Americans are 4 times more likely to be locked up for the exact same crime as whites if you're talking about drug possession. And even if you're talking about drug possession in and of itself, African American president, Democratic president, learn it. I'm sure he knows that the drug program was instituted because of Nixon wanting to find ways to castigate blacks and hippies in order to keep these groups disparate and use it somewhat as a political weapon. I'm not saying it. The person who worked for Nixon, who came up with the strategy, said it. Harper's Magazine. Does Obama know that? And if Obama knows that, and if Obama still allowed those people to remain in prison and still allow cops to pull people over and lock people up for drug possession, for marijuana, just go with marijuana. What is this about him? Ultimately, purely for political reasons, you've allowed all these people to stay in prison, knowing that all of this was done not because it was a hazard to the public, but done purely for political effect by a Republican administration. And you still allowed it. Obama walking through the prisons, letting a few people go, is not the same thing as taking it off of the scheduling as a Schedule 1 drug or Schedule 8, whatever they call it, but taking it off the same scheduling as heroin or coke or crack. That's a magnificent failure. It's a failure for weakness, not a failure of intelligence. It's a failure of weakness. Let's keep going. This is almost done. Some of us remember reading a Charles Dickinson books about debtor prisons. You remember that, Sanders said. Debtor prisons. Oh, that was terrible in the 1800s in England. Well, I got news for you. We got debtor prisons in the United States. Black Lives Matter activist Justice Elliott are working to halt more than $2 billion jail expansion plan in Los Angeles County. Sanders and King urged those in the audience to sign a petition against the expansion. You need to do more than sign a goddamn petition. Here in California this Tuesday and in coming years, you hear the largest state in America can help lead the country, Sanders said. We need district attorneys and prosecutors who understand that the job is not just throwing people in jail, but fighting for justice. Sanders' day-long tour of Southern California started with Disney workers fighting for a $15 minimum wage in Anaheim. Next, he stopped in Carson to speak with port truck drivers and warehouse workers calling on elected officials to end the exploitive and illegal labor practices. Though Sanders has dodged questions about whether he plans to challenge Donald Trump in 2020, his California visit only fanned those flames. When we talk to criminal justice reform, this reform has enormous political ramifications. Today, 6 million Americans have lost the right to vote because of a felony disenfranchisement. Sanders said Friday. 1.5 million of them live in the state of Florida. Now, some of you remember a little while ago a presidential election that was decided a few hundred votes in Florida. They blamed Ralph Nader for that. Democrats blamed Ralph Nader. Al Gore couldn't even win his own goddamn state. And beyond winning his own goddamn state, he didn't even have the spine to bring up the fact that hundreds of thousands of African Americans weren't allowed to vote in that state. You had one African American in the Black Caucus after the next come up saying, "We are not backing this vote. This is nonsense. We've been cheated. They're trying to steal the election." And you couldn't find one spineless Democrat in the Senate to come back and back up the notion. Weak, weak, weak. Utterly weak. Bernie Sanders is building an army. I love it. He's making up for the mistakes from the last election. That is literally what this is. He is cobbling together activists, environmentalists, African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans. And he's doing it in an intersectional way by championing all of these causes that the left wants, that they say could never take place, that nobody can get behind. This is an issue of class, if we're being honest, and I'll end it here. There's a reason why class never comes up in the conversation from the standpoint of politics. Your political space are governed by plutocrats. All the people who are in Congress, for the most part, are plutocrats. Nancy Pelosi has hundreds of millions of dollars, and yet she's talking about a better deal. What does a better deal mean to somebody who has $100 million? What does that mean? Ultimately, at the end of the day, what Sanders is talking about is class. The reason why the media, the newspapers, the television shows, the politicians don't bring up issues of class and don't bring up issues that would dramatically change how we go about living our lives from the standpoint of vulnerabilities is because they themselves are plutocrats. The people of means don't necessarily want to talk about why they have so much and why everyone else has so little. In the last race that Sanders ran, he ran that race in a slight haphazard way because he had no expectation of winning that race. Well, this is different. I've said before that if Sanders went into that race with the expectation of winning, it would be different. He's waged war on multiple fronts. Our revolution is one front. The Unity Commission is another front. I don't necessarily know if they're going to allow those things. Who knows? What does Sanders do if they shoot down all of his proposals? But the proposal to have open voting is a direct assault on the Democratic Party and the democratic process within the Democratic Party, meaning the way they go about their affairs. So it's not a democratic process at all. It's an undemocratic process. But it's a direct assault on the undemocratic process of electing somebody in the primaries of the Democratic Party. Attacking superdelegates is a direct assault on the undemocratic process of the Democratic Party. Sanders may have dodged those questions about whether he's running, but he's certainly building an army in a way that looks like he's running, or I should say building a coalition that looks like he's running. This is awesome. This is a good thing. It's one thing for me to be against somebody. It's one thing for me to go for somebody, and I love it. Keep on trucking, Jamal. Pat Hacker. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate it. Beltazar, I hope this is the start of him turning on Democrats. He definitely needs to get better on Black Lives Matter after he threw them under the bus with Chuck Todd when he pressed for Russian bait for no reason. Yes, agreed. But this is awesome though, Beltazar. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, he's essentially coming to a rally and he's out there with them, not them coming on the stage saying, we're going to shut this rally down right now. No. This is, I'm with you. This is the guy that was chained to a black woman in a rally in a protest. He was never against you. He was never against you. But I do acknowledge and love this part where he says, I hear you. I hear you. I'm here. I love it. I love it. Video game Vision Quest. Kalita, she does have a good support group. What she needs is her fellow citizens to shake themselves from the apathy to step up to help her. There's going to be a war in 2020 in the primaries. This is my horse. If Sanders runs, that's my horse. That's the guy I'm betting on. That's the guy who I'm going to war for. Now, the fact that he's building these coalitions, he is undercutting the needs of the Democratic Party and the thing in the Democratic Party that they have used and manipulated and has essentially used for political effect. Hot sauce in their purse. You might as well say that's the Democratic Party. We got hot sauce in our pockets. This is different. His support base is different. So, Bernie Sanders, association with Black Lives Matter, fucking A. Fucking A. Fucking A. I love it. 21st century FDR. Next summer is the start of the war. No. The war has already started. The pitchforks have already been drawn. The niceties that these guys are having with one another is just surface. That war has never ended. Have you noticed the animosity between Hillbots and Sanders? Do you think that if that war hadn't already started and they haven't already acknowledged those hostilities that they would be that way towards one another? Lefties don't even consider themselves Democrats. That's where we are. So when we say the war has already started, I'm saying the war for the party and open, but that conflict has already started. The conflict is already there. Dingo ate my baby. Gore donors stopped him from fighting. They probably said, you won't get a high-paying job on the corporate boards. No, there's something else to it, Dingo. None of them like challenging this idea that the process that's used to elect a person is somehow flawed. All of them use that process to get elected. They don't want to rattle that boat. When John Kerry realized that something was screwy with the vote in Ohio, he didn't challenge the vote at all either. Hillary Clinton could have challenged the vote in Wisconsin, some of these other states. She didn't do it. She would have had the money to do it. She didn't do it. They didn't do it because just like Stalin in the show trials, where you had Soviets who were part of that system who knew goddamn well this was a show trial, they shut their mouth and they went about their way to their own executions, praising the awesomeness of their system. You have leaders who lose an election, who knows there may be something dicey with the way they lost, and still go out praising the system. Same thing. Bo Lekaleba Jamal, while he was in California, Shaq suggested Bernie that he join the Sacramento Queens. Ha ha ha. Ha ha, asshole. Jerry Shellman, this is how people just go to sleep in real time. I'm trying to be patient with Jamal. Clyde Illusion. Uh-oh. Why are you trying to be patient with me, Clyde? Cynthia McKinney for president. I do like Cynthia McKinney. She was on the show, by the way, for an interview. Pat Hacker. Dingo, look at Gore chose for BP. He was corrupt to begin with. Agreed. Bo like a leopard. Come on, man. I had to say something. That's just funny. No, I agree with you. It's funny. God, no. Cue the sad trumpet. Uh-oh. Wah. There is no independent. Sanders-led army. Sanders has not rectified his mistakes. He has not addressed fraud, pushes DC talking points absurd as he runs as a Democrat. Totally disagree. Oh God, we're going to get into Sanders off. Totally disagree. This is the battle lines are drawn. Fair enough. There are political consequences for the things that you do. And not everything that you do is going to be nice in the moment, nor are you going to always feel great in the moment that they take place, but they do have larger ramifications for later. My knight getting pushed back to B8 in the beginning of the game looks bad, but if you're playing a particular strategy, the Briar defense, well, that's not necessarily a bad tactic, seeing as the knight going to be repositioned into another place once your opponent overextends their position. I'm trying to make a subtle point here, and I don't mean to be in the technicals of chess. African Americans getting beat on a bridge in Selma has larger ramifications. Yes, they stomped those people with their boots and with their paddles and everything else, but at the end of the day, it antagonized a large part of the population that said, this is beyond the pale, this is not who we are. Just because something happens, meaning they break Sanders and they hoist his body up, across the DNC, and just kind of parade him around. Is this your leader? Is this your leader? Look at him. Say it. Say it. Vote Hillary. Vote Hillary. But what are the larger ramifications of this? Yeah, they left him out there. He had to crawl to the place in order to, get his stuff and get his energy back up. But what does it mean for later when he finally does crawl back to his house? When he finally does rejuvenates himself and he gets well and all this other stuff, and he comes back and he understands the situation to which he's presented with. What takes place? What are the political consequences? Not talking about right and wrong. Right and wrong doesn't exist. What are the political consequences if he did what you told him or wanted him to do? He calls out fraud. Does anything change? He gets called the sore loser. He gets put to the corner in the same way that Ralph Nader gets put to the corner. As opposed to retaining political clout, even though he takes a hit. I would make the point to you that while I didn't necessarily like the fact he didn't call out the fraud, I agree with you on that point. That point I agree with you on. I look at this though and I ask the question, what happens if he does? And if he does call out the fraud in this, does it change his position? Meaning, is his position and station now superior to what it would be if he had did what you wanted him to do? I can't fully see the consequences of what takes place if he did that. What I will say is, looking at the disposition he is now, and looking at the disposition he may be in 2020, where he aggregates this army and brings up this political force behind him, I think he's better off. I think he's better off. I could be wrong, but I do think he's better off. Do I want him to call out fraud? Yes. I agree. That part I agree. That part I do agree. I've heard a lot of people say him running as a third party. Again, I don't know if I agree with the running as a third party. I had an argument, I think, with Brana over this, where Brana was making the argument he should have ran as a third party. I said, but what would have happened if he did that? If he lost, all hell would have taken loose, and all the blame of the loss would have been put on Sanders. That's a must-win situation. That's a politically must-win situation if Sanders was running as a third party. That's a high risk. Brana thinks he can win that risk. I'm glad Brana thinks so. I'm not sure. But we'll see. I could be wrong. Just when Doer's really questioning his support of Bernie, Jamal jumps on it. I never jumped on it. I was always here. The election in California yesterday tells me Bernie must stay in the party. There's literally no other choice. DC 420 LA. I think he needs... I know this sounds bad. You've heard me make the point of saying vote for the person who represents your interests. That's outside. That doesn't matter. Party doesn't factor into that. If Sanders has to use the Democratic Party to do it, use the husk of that party, then he uses the husk to do it. He would get my vote. Whether it's him, Tulsi, Nina Turner doesn't want to come on the show. I guess we're not her type of people. She told me to call her appointment setter, and the appointment setter said that's okay. So I'm assuming they want our votes, but we're not their type of people. It's like we like the poor, we just like the smell of them. But even if Nina Turner ran, same difference. I mean, I would vote for those people if those people ran as Democrats. It's the person to me. Bernie just punched the dock today and gave hints to a third party. Good. Pop reality. I'm okay with it. You must understand what I mean by this when I say this. I think we need to exit both parties. Both parties, in the way that the parties are structured right now, are not seeing to the benefit of the public itself. They've been putting their thumb, at the very least the Democratic Party has been putting its thumb on this idea of somebody trying to change the party. They're talking about a better deal, but the people who implement that are being kept out of the process. They're literally putting their thumb on the scale. So that's true. I don't believe that the Democratic Party is the avenue in order for things to change in this country, unless it can be destroyed and rebuilt. Even then, in order to prevent something like this from happening, the gamesmanship that's taking place where these two parties are captured by corporate oligarchical interests, you do need something else. You do need a third, fourth, fifth, sixth party, and those things should be easy to create and easy to form. It sounds like I'm saying do different things that I'm not. I am making the point that you vote for who represents your interests. Oftentimes, those people are just not in the Democratic Party. If those people just so happen on random to be a member of the party, they would get my vote. Pop reality. DNC, not typo, my bad. Bernie just punched the DNC today and gave hints to a third party. Here's the catch, though. And this is where I would say good day. If Bernie Sanders runs in 2020, and Bernie Sanders is cheated again, and Bernie Sanders comes out and still say vote Kamala Harris, I'm fucking done. Balthazar 228. Will he go independent? If he either gets nominated or gets cheated out, I think he wins third way. When you run as a progressive and govern like a neoliberal corporatist, that's not change, that's more the same. Agreed, Balthazar, agreed. But I don't think he would govern as a neoliberal corporatist. And here's another newsflash. If we want change around the world, I realize that change is going to have to take place here first. It has to take place here first. Like, any government that's going to try to put some kind of left-wing agenda has the potential of being crushed by the United States. Meaning left-wing governments in some areas of like South America are impossible to form. Look at what we're doing in Venezuela. Look at what we're doing in Nicaragua. Look at what we did to Cuba. We might have had various reasons to do those things to those countries But we are going to instigate ourselves in those countries, especially if you have right-wing governments involved. Change has to take place here. It has to take place here. Look, I am, if Tulsi Gabbard ran, Tulsi Gabbard would get my vote in a heartbeat. We need a third party. I don't think the Democratic Party is a salvation that I think some people think. That being said, if Sanders ran as a Democrat, he'd get my vote. With the people down ticket, not so much. Now, here's the other catch. Who will Sanders choose to head the DNC if he wins? Would you construct the new DNC? I think the answer is yes. Here's the other odd part. Democrats themselves, if they were confronted, kind of like the FDR thing, where FDR ran or FDR got in office and you had Democrats who was pushing against the reforms that he himself wanted to make, Sanders will probably have to deal with the same level of opposition, with the catch and the difference being that opposition will be known and will be clarified, and so people can see the difference between who he is versus who they are. In the same way that they're okay with going with these right-wing policies when these right-wing Democrats are in office, I strongly suspect that they will also be amiable to go with left-wing policies. I think they're spineless. I think if enough pressure is put on them, especially when you have the head of the country saying that they want XYZ, at the very least, I would love for them to make the arguments on why Medicare for all is not something they can do when the majority of the public is pushing for it. I'm waiting for Democrats to make an argument of why college is not something they can do when the President of the United States is screaming in the bully pulpit. With the other benefit that Donald Trump has magnificently stretched the standard and the tone for the presidency so much that the next president that comes in is going to have a certain amount of latitude for presidential power. If Sanders ran in 2020, I would be a part of that group. Tulsi ran in 2020, I would be a part of that group. Pop reality. In my view, Bernie Sanders is the new MLK considering the movement taking place. I'll debate you on this, which I'm sure you disagree. Goddamn right I'm going to disagree with that. Hell yeah, I'm going to disagree. You'll debate me on that? You'll debate me on that? Malaska, Jamal, look how many trolls you get that's telling me the way you play chess, the way you communicate is very effective and unnerving to the establishment. Yeah, because I just tell you what I think. I just tell you what I think. Also, I don't, this establishment stuff, the way I play chess, that's funny. I play the Breyer defense where you kind of move back to B8. One concentration camp less. Sam Cedar made that argument, saying if somebody said if Obama was going for one concentration camp less than Mitt Romney, would you vote for Obama? Sam Cedar says yes. He says yes. One concentration camp less. Cedar. Yep. If Bernie backs the phony Kamala, I'll assure he's either lost his mind or received serious death threats from the DNC thugs against his family. Mary Halverson. Man, if Sanders voted, I would be done. I would be done. I would be packing this shit up. Guard Gnome, I've been playing the long game. I feel you, Guard. I would be crushed by that. Like, I would be utterly crushed. Yeah, I'd be utterly crushed. I don't even want to fathom that. Like, I can't. Spoiled my day. Bernie's still harping on Russian collusion. I can't respect that Pat Hacker. I feel you. Fraud with, I don't know how to play Go, but I do know what it is. Essentially, Chinese chess. Look, I understand that I don't like Sanders pushing the Russia thing. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. 1,000 times hate it. But let's accept something for the moment. He's in a different political space than I am. He's a politician. I'm not. I'm not a journalist. I'm a guy. I'm just a dude who's looking at the news and is reading it and is giving my perspective of it with a particular humanistic viewpoint. That's all I am. I talk about Star Trek, I give philosophical musings, I do the news, I talk about UFOs. I try to give this perspective of what is a rational point of view. If you're a man standing on the moon looking at the series of events, what is a rational point of view? I also look at this from the standpoint, not of right or wrong, at least not all the time, but sometimes of action and consequence. Sanders may take certain dispositions because he believes that he can get further along by taking those dispositions. You may dislike that. You may hate that. I don't particularly like that myself. But you have to admit, the position he's in right now is damn good. And if he would have taken a contrary position, he would not have been able to get to that point. So I don't necessarily, and you've seen one video after the next with me being pissed off at Sanders pushing this Russia nonsense because I feel like he's throwing people under the bus. But he's building an army. Like whatever I want to think of this, it does seem like he is building an army, or you can say a coalition. And this coalition of African Americans, he is fighting for that coalition of African Americans that the Democratic Party so holds close to their chests. Where's my black guy? Yeah. Democratic Party holds them so tightly and closely. Sleep on my breast. He's going after that. And that's a good thing. That's a damn good thing. So, all right. I'm going to end this. Jimmy Dore is going to be here at 2:30 in 2 hours. And, oh God, what is his name? Abby Martin is going to be here tomorrow at 5. Balthazar, that's not change, more the same was Obama's 08 catchphrase, was a parody. Breyer defense sounds like the Supreme Court ruling, and 22.5% of non-voters are up for grabs, and Bernie could get those 14% of GOP and 35% already. You know what's wild about that? The majority of the country is independents. Balthazar, I'm agreeing with you. Bernie Sanders maxed them out in spades. Joe Manchin is terrified about losing that race in West Virginia. Bernie Sanders won it in spades. You have a large half of the country doesn't vote because they don't believe that people represent their interests. Guess who's going to get that half? Bernie fucking Sanders. When you were looking at the race totals and you would see matchups, Bernie Sanders versus Ted Cruz, trashes him. It wasn't even close. Bernie Sanders against Donald Trump beats him by like 15% spread. Hillary Clinton 1%. Hillary Clinton against Ted Cruz, losing against disgusting Ted Cruz. And we already saw that she couldn't beat a reality show host. The strength of Sanders is, with Democrats, because he'll get those, especially if he wins the nomination. He's going to carry the Democrats just like any other Democrat would. You're going to have some Hillbots who doesn't like him, so fair enough, they can go fuck off. Independents. No one asked why that 50% doesn't vote. And fact is, of all the candidates who has the potential to get a large share of that non-voting 50%, Bernie Sanders has to be the top of the list. So, Balthazar, yes. Agreed. Balthazar, agreed. Danny Knapp, check your mic settings before Jimmy interview. Sounds like clipping on 16-bit or 20. Oh, let me make sure. Let's see what's going on. Well, the other mic is disabled. Oh, you may be hearing my ink pen. I'm sorry. You're my ink pen. I'm sorry. My bad. That's me. My bad. Gardner, we don't have a clear idea as to what pressure were used to make Sanders cave last time. Yes, we do. Political pressure. It's just political pressure. You have, you're responsible to your group. Let's accept that for the moment. You're responsible to your group, meaning you're responsible to the people around you. Who is your group? Do I care two shits about what Ted Cruz thinks of me? No. Why not? Because Ted Cruz is not a part of my group. Do I care about what some right-winger thinks of what I believe of the world. I do not, because they're not part of my group. Do I care what you all think? Yes. You're my group. And what I mean by that is, ultimately, you allow me to do what I do. You're part of my power base, so I need to care about what my power base thinks. Otherwise, I will lose my power base. Sanders and the people around Sanders. For the most part, Sanders colludes with Democrats when he's in Congress in office. Those are the people that are around him. The President of the United States saying, hey, we need you to give up the race. Hillary Clinton and all of her acolytes, all of these Democrats, all of these Hillbots, all of these people putting pressure on Sanders. It's time to get out the race. 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 That's the pressure. Nobody has to threaten him or hit him or anything else. The pressure is political. It just is. It's your group. It's the people who are around you. It's the perspective of the people who you consider to be part of your group. That's all that matters. That's all it has to be. It doesn't have to be any kind of force or stress or anything else. I know people wonder, like, why is he doing that? Why is he doing that? What is the incentive or pressure for me to have a softball interview with Dore? What is the incentive for me or for Rachel Maddow to have a softball interview with with Hillary Clinton? There's certain things I'm pretty sure Rachel Maddow wanted to ask Hillary Clinton. Rachel Maddow is a Democrat. Hillary Clinton is a Democrat. She's on MSNBC. She wants Hillary Clinton to win. There are certain things just built into that particular relationship that keeps her from asking Hillary Clinton certain questions and hardball questions. I make the point to you that the same thing takes place in politics. There's a certain pressure put on certain politicians based on either their power base or based on the people that are around them that pushes them for certain things. I don't think anybody had to threaten them or otherwise. Pop reality, we can have that debate, buddy. We can have that debate. Not now, because I have a lot of videos to get to, but definitely send me an email so we can schedule and have that debate. Bernie Sanders as the new Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was a reverend. And I think I know where you're going. Sanders' speech on like economics and poverty and so forth. And you can even make a case that if he starts getting into this thing of yeah, fuck that, no. I'm reflexively saying no. I'm reflexively saying no. Sanders has lost a huge chunk of his base. Pat Hacker. That's temporary. That's temporary. Pat, that's temporary. By 2020, if Sanders runs, mark my words, Pat Hacker will get Sanders' vote. I'm writing that shit down. When I write shit down in a book, Pat, that's it. MLK was all about the war. MLK would not have endorsed Hillary Clinton. I love that. 21st century FDR. Jamal, has anyone been to a Bernie rally in the last year? It's legit. Seeing 13-year girls screaming for him, there's no less enthusiasm than the majority of the population saying otherwise. Is agreed. I agree. Fully agree. Like if you, I agree. He may take a certain disposition to get him from point A to B, but Sanders is still Sanders. So I suspect that a lot of that base, once the election season gets around, and if he's running, will be right there with him. I strongly suspect it. I could be wrong. Clyde Illusion. Jamal, make sure you ask our questions to Dore when he comes on, okay? Well, that's going to be up to Dore, but we'll see. Hey, super chats definitely get asked, but oftentimes it's going to be up to Dore on whether or not he asks questions or receives questions. So, and keep in mind, I often have a list. So often, like, people are like, so I don't necessarily see everything that pops up. That's why I say super chat. I can see it, even if it's like $2. At the very least, I'll be able to see it. Bernie still gives a shit about other people. There's that. That's a novel trait, isn't it, Baltazar? That's a novel trait. Alan B. Sanders would never get my vote. You say that now, buddy. Dim exit. Yes, I agree with dim exit, but dim exit, but. Alright, guys, I'm going to end this here. They would rather lose to Ted Cruz than rather win with a socialist. Oh, God, Garden. Isn't that fucked up? I agree with you, Garden, but isn't that fucked up? Alright guys, I'll end this here. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support the Patreon. Again, I have a slew of these. Apparently, there was somebody protesting at the Left Forum. I didn't see it. God, I wish I was there when they were protesting. They were protesting, essentially, humanitarian for the Syrian war. They were protesting because the lefties were against it. I'll end it here. Alright guys, you all have a good one. I'll see you guys in about 15-20 minutes. Bye bye.